going on, guys? Blazing here, and today we got another Raid Shadow Legends video. Today we're going to be talking about the new hard mode dungeon, but we're going to focus on the spider. So HP burn is out, guys, and so is freeze. It looks like we're basically going to have to rely on enemy max HP, stuns, and fears. And I feel like poisons may come into play here. Maybe Zavia, along with like a what is it? If you have Calvalax, or if you have who's that skinwalker? Taurus. So if you have like two Taurus, a Taurus, somebody, I don't know, maybe two Taurus, a miscreated, a Zavia, and a Kaimar to reset. I think that might be the team to go with. I don't know. Unfortunately, I won't be around to test it out. This video is actually pre-recorded, so I'm going to be on vacation with the kiddos. So, but what I wanted to do with this is kind of go through champions I feel are going to be great for this because they have an AoE stun. And there's a lot of them. There will be some honorable mentions, right? We'll go through with that, and we'll kind of talk about it. So the first one that I want to get out of the way is Tunisia, right? She does bring AoE stuns, but you can't put any accuracy on her because she will place HP burn, and HP burn is going to heal the spider, not take it down. So I feel the 10x that they're doing for Tunisia right now is not good, right? You can't really use it for that. So no discredit to her. She's a great champion. I love her. I have her on my alt account, but I don't feel like she's going to be good for this. So the 10x that is going on, I would not pull for her. Anyways, let's move on. So the first one we're going to have is actually a login champion that a lot of you get. I believe it's like 90 days in. Scylla the Drakes. On the A2, attacks all enemies 2 times. Each hit has a 20% chance of placing a stun for 1 turn. She's defense-based. You can build her tanky. You can build her in a regen set. I'm actually going to be dropping a video on building her, but without any accuracy. I will be dropping another one that has her built with accuracy and being tanky as well. She does bring the decreased speed on the A1 and a revive and ally protection on the A2. Also a very strong passive of healing with a increased speed, right? Next one we're going to have after that is going to be, let me get my list up here. One that is also another login champion, but you won't get her for about a year into the game. Eric's. So she's got attacks all enemies on the A1, attacks all enemies on the A2, places a stun, and then an ally protection and counter attack on her on the A3, and then the passive feels her turn meter and heals her each time, feels her turn meter by 5% each time an enemy inflicts a critical hit, right? So if the spiderlings are managing to get a turn and they crit, she'll get boosted turn meter, which means she can go back to her A1, back to her A2 much faster, and then also heals this champion by 5% of their max HP each time an enemy inflicts a critical hit. So I think for her, the ideal build is probably going to be a stun set, which means, unfortunately, I'm going to have to rebuild mine because I just built it for the faction board, clan boss games. The next one is going to be a previous fusion, and that is Astralon. Places a weaken and a stun on the A3. Shield on the A2. Will ignore increased defense, strengthen, and ally protection buffs. Won't really help you here, but will also place a decreased defense on the A1 with the boss, and then feels this champion's turn meter by 3% every time an ally is hit. Decreases the incoming damage by 25% if the attacker's attack is lower than this champion's. So, then I believe for this next one, we are going to go into Bannerlords, and it's Staltus. On his A2, attacks 2 times. Each hit has a 50% chance of placing a stun. His A3 is places the increased defense buff on himself, has a 75% chance of placing a decreased crit damage for 2 turns on enemies whose attack is higher than their defense, and then has a 75% chance of placing a decreased speed for those enemies whose attack is equal to or lower than their defense. And I believe this is an AoE. Yeah, it is an AoE. So you can basically build him again in a stun set. And then you get stuns on the A2, stuns on the A3, and then A1, you know, just decreases the target's turn meter, but you won't be using that in this one. Next we have Leave Killian. No, he's just a single target, so he won't help us. We do have Archmage Helmet, who is, I believe, the first Doom Tower reward that you can get. Attacks one enemy, also attacks all other enemies if the first attack is critical. The second hit has a 50% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn after attacking, decreases the target's turn meter for each enemy without stun. You won't really get the decreasing turn meter part, but you will be able to use the stun part, right? So you have that. Let's get out of here. Next one we have is a Lizardman. Actually, the Lizardmen have quite a few that you can use. Fushan on the A2 also brings, an increased speed aura in all battles, and a decreased defense on the A4. Granted, it's random, but you could still use it. But the A2 attacks all enemies 2 times. Each hit has a 20% chance of placing a stun debuff, which means even if he weak hits, it's still going to go on. Then you have Basatha? I don't know how you say that. But he brings a decreased attack on the A1, 50% for 2 turns. He brings a strengthen continuous heal and shield on the A2. And then A3 attacks all enemies, has a 75% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn, decreasing the turn meter by 30% and decreasing the turn meter by 30%. Again, you won't be able to decrease turn meter, so it doesn't really matter. Whenever an enemy is revived, has a 75% chance of placing a stun debuff on him for 1 turn. This effect cannot be resisted or blocked. I don't think when the Spiderlings are summoned, it counts as a revive, so that won't help you. But he also brings a 31% HP aura in all battles. I think Basilisk? No. All of those are single target, so no one else there. Then we have one of my favorite champions, Nethril. And he's going to be another great candidate to actually build in a stun set. Because A2 is 75% decreases 75% attacks all enemies down to a 4-turn cooldown. A3, which is actually going to be powerful here, is attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance of placing a stun debuff on all enemies for 1 turn, places a 30% decreased speed buff for 2 turns if target's not under stun. So one way or another, you're going to do something. And if you pair him in a stun set, you get 2 stuns, and then you get poisons on the A1, which means you won't, you could hit the boss with the poisons. So, a call out here is going to be Euros on the A2, right? Attacks all enemies, has a 75% chance of placing a decreased turn meter for 50% for enemies under 1 target, 1 poison. We'll place it decreased speed for enemies under 2 poisons, and we'll place a stun for enemies under 3 poisons. So a strategy here might be you come out and you make him the slower person on your champion, on your team, and then you have either like your Cavalax or your Taurus go out, throw the stun on him, and then have Xavia come in and blow up the Spiderlings. Alright, so next one we have is going to be a High Elf, and that's Silius Roanus. On the A3, attacks all enemies, has a 75% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn, decreases the target's turn meter by 50% if the target's If the stun is not placed under the target, if the stun debuff is not placed on the target. Too much talking today, guys. Too much talking. Attacks one enemy 3 times will ignore increased defense buff, shields, and block damage, as well as 50% of the target's defense. And then A1 has an 80% chance of stealing a random buff from the target, has an 80% chance of placing a block debuffs for 1 turn on the target if the target has no active buffs. We only really care about his A3, so. And then we have, whoops, let's get out of here. Then we have a dwarf in Gofford Brass Cloud, who brings a decreased defense provoke on the A1, stun on the A2, attacks all enemies, has a 75% chance of placing the stun debuff for 1 turn, and then places a 60% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns, then removes any decreased defense and weakened debuffs on the allies, and that's on a 3-turn cooldown. So, next we move on to the rares. And I think this next one is actually going to be MVP for this, because he brings 2 debuffs, an ally protection, and a massive shield, right? So on the A2, he brings a stun, attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn, and then places a shield buff on all allies equal to on all allies for 3 turns equal to 25% of the damage inflicted. He is one of the only ones, I believe, that can place it for 3 turns. And it's on a 3-turn cooldown. So you get a shield for 3 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. I think he's going to be a definite must in this. He basically provides what a Ashelon and a Sir Nick together, and he's an epic. I honestly think the only thing that would be better is if the A1 wasn't conditional on a stun. Then I think he'd be up to snuff with the rest of the new epics that are getting released, and then just make this in all battles, not in arena. But I think, and then the passive places a fear debuff on the attacker for 1 turn whenever an ally is attacked under ally protection. So they get the turn after the stun, great. If ally protection is out, which it should be because he places an ally protection on the A3 on a 4-turn cooldown for 3 turns, right? Then you get fear, right? So I think he's going to be a must on this. Next is going to be another fusion, and he was a while ago. Where is he? Where is he? Where is he? Is he in this faction? I thought he was. No, he's not in this faction. He's an orc, I'm guessing. I was just in the orcs. He's a, or is it a barbarian? Right here, Huskrul. Attacks 1 enemy, has a 30% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. Attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. Decreases the turn meter of enemies under stun by 15%. Won't really help you there. Removes all stun debuffs from the allies, then places a 60% increased defense and a 25% increased resistance on all allies for 2 turns on a 4-turn cooldown. This is a 3-turn cooldown, and it books up to 75%. And then his passive is immune to stuns, increases damage affected by all allies by 15% when attacking enemies under stun. So that's actually going to be pretty huge, if you ask me. You know, if another strat for this might be you throw out your Bad Alcazard, you throw out a Taurus, you put him out, so, or your Cavalax, you do Cavalax, you do yeah, actually, I think the strat might actually not be. It might be Poison Explosion, unless they nerf it somehow. But I think it's going to be. He comes out, he stuns, then you have your Bad Alcazard come out, place out poisons. Cavalax places out poisons. Xavier goes in and explodes, and then reset. Right? I think that's probably going to be a viable strat right there, depending on how much damage he takes. Or the spider takes from each spiderling dying or being defeated. Then the next one is going to be one that is a carry for Bommel up to, I believe it's like level 50. Burning Gary. On the A2, attacks all enemies, has a 40% chance, books up to 50 of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. He's defense based, so you'll be able to keep him healthy. Heals this champion by 50% of their max HP whenever an ally or an enemy dies. A1 puts a provoke out, and then A2 brings you a shield and strength on all allies. So, and then last but not least, we have somebody that you guys should have probably at least 1 or 2 copies of built up, Husk. And this is going to fit in the enemy max HP, where he brings attacks all enemies, has a 35% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn, inflicts damage inflicted to proportional to the enemy's max HP. So you can get the damage on the spiderlings, you can get the damage on the spider, have a chance to put some stuns out there, provoke on the A1, I would turn off the A2, brings you a arena, which you don't really care about. But if you bring out like a decreased defense in a weekend, and then, you know, 2 husks in there, reset, maybe a 3rd husk, or somebody to taunt the spiderlings and protect you, that might also be a viable strat too. And then I have some callouts that I think are going to work in a stun set. My first one is actually going to be Biggin, right? Biggin, A1, attacks 1 enemy, then attacks all allies if the first attack is critical. A2, attacks all enemies, has a 30% chance of placing a stun for 1 turn. Also has a 50% chance of decreasing placing a 50% decrease accuracy for 2 turns. And then his A3 attacks all enemies 2 times, decreases the turn meter of all, decreases the turn meter by 25%, chance placing a decreased speed for 2 turns. I think he is going to find himself in a lot of the teams. AoE on every ability, and is placing a stun on the A2, and also can be put in a stun set with Fearsome Presence to increase the chances of placing the stun. Next one is going to be, where am I going? Right here. Next one's going to be an Epic. She is fairly squishy, but you can build her this way for Arena. Not Arena, sorry. You can build her this way for Faction Wars, but she's got an attacks all enemies on the A1, attacks all enemies on the A2, and then places a 30% decreased speed on the A3 on all enemies for 2 turns. Then decreases the turn meter of all enemies by 40%. So you can build it into Sunset, and you have AoE all day long, right? So I think she'd be good. And then you have my last one is going to be another Orgrin, who is an excellent campaign farmer. A1 attacks all enemies, has a 20% chance of placing a block active skills. A2 attacks all enemies, has a 50% chance of placing a decreased speed. A3 attacks all enemies, has a 75% chance of placing a decreased attack for 2 turns. Has a 75% chance of placing a 30% decreased defense for 2 turns. Both of them being the weak source, but he does have AoE on all 3 turns. So you can pretty much have a multi-use for him, where if you build him with enough speed, he can go 2-to-1, keep your spiderlings under control, and you can also use him as a campaign farmer, right? And then the last call out is going to be the big girl herself, Armina. Where is it? Decreases the turn meter of all enemies, has a 75% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn, while all enemies who have their turn meters depleted. This one, I don't know, you can build her in a stun set, because the A2 is going to attack all enemies, has a 75% chance of placing a decreased debuff for 2 turns, steals 7.5% of the turn meter from targets under decreased defense. Now, if we can steal the turn meter from the spiderlings, you lead off from the A2 into the A3, and then the A1, you can keep the stun out there on multiple targets. So, guys, I hope that this video helped you. I hope you can kind of see what some of the strats are going to be. I don't have test server access. I wish I did. If I did, I'd be on there right now trying to get as much as possible done. I do think Miscreated is going to be a huge carry on this boss. He's very overlooked nowadays because there's a lot of other epics that do the same thing he does, but I think he's going to be a must-build champion for this dungeon, especially for the end game. Some of the other endgame players are probably just going to throw 2 or 3 Acrisias in there and call it a day, but not everybody's going to be having 2 or 3 Acrisias. We're not all a whale out there. We're not all whales out there, right? If you did pull for Acrisia, I hope you had luck. I hope you got one. If you did, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know if I missed anybody in this. I'm pretty sure I did a good job at going through it and figuring it out, but if I did, let me know. Guys, as always, be well, be safe, be good to each other, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.